Hey everyone, today we'll be writing polyfill of promises in JavaScript. This is one of the most commonly asked JavaScript interview questions where the interviewer checks a lot of the core concepts of JavaScript using this polyfill. So let's get started. Yeah, as always, I'll make use of the snippets provided by Chrome developer tools, right? I find it easier to write in snippets because I can just execute over here. So before starting with the polyfill, let's try to see how promise is actually implemented in JavaScript, like how we write promises. So let's get started. Let my promise equals to new promise, right? This is the syntax, and it takes an executor function. So this is the general syntax of writing a promise, and let's define executor function equals to, it's just a function. So this function takes two parameters, both are callback called resolve and reject. And usually the idea behind using promise is to run an asynchronous operation, right? That we do not know how much time it's going to take, but it's not synchronous. So let's say that our function gets resolved in 1 second. So let's make use of set timeout and give an interval of 1 second, that is 1000 millisecond, and say that we resolve a value called success after 1 second. Now let's try to see what we get the output. So this is a syntax. We have to go do promise.then, then it gives data, right? Let's try to console log. We'll use template literal data received in then is and then we have data, right? So the expected output is that after 1 second it should print on the screen. Let's run. Yes, after 1 second it printed. Now the same thing, instead of resolve, if I do reject, it's not rejecting success, it's rejecting suppose error. Then for reject I have to have a catch method, right? Catch gets an data that I want to console log, right? Date error received in catch is, let's do error. Now let's see. So same as previous, this time it should after 1 second it should print error. Yes, that's true. Now we also know that promise, the then or catch returns for the promise, right? That means that then is thenable. Like we can have chains of then. For example, like over here, instead of just consoling the value, I'll do one thing. I'll console the value, but also I'll return something, right? Like return I'll just return my name, and then I'll try to put another then, and again similarly I'll just console.log data received in second then is what should happen is there should be two consoles after 1 second, one for this and second for this. Let's see whether that works or not. Error received in catch is error. Okay, because here I have still done the reject, right? Let's do it resolve, and instead of error let's do success and see the output. Yes, this is the output that we want, right? So this is basically how promises work in JavaScript. Now let's try to implement the same. Now let's comment everything that we have. We'll make use of this later while testing our polyfill code. So we'll make use of class to create our promise. So let's call it polypromise, right? Class has a constructor, right? We know that promise takes an executor function, so we pass that executor function to the constructor. Also we have seen that promise exposes three methods called then, catch and finally, for which we have not given the example yet, but we'll discuss more about this. So we have a then function here, right? We have catch and we have finally. Okay, so our and each of this takes a callback, right? Because you know that when you're doing then you are actually passing a function to this, so this is a callback function. So now as soon as we pass as soon as we create a promise, our executor function has to execute, right? So we'll call an executor function, but we know that executor function takes two parameters, resolve function and reject function. So we will create that, but we'll create two function over here. One is const resolve function equals to something, and const reject function equals to, again this is also a function, right? So we have this executor function. Now we know that when executor function executes, it will either call resolve or reject, that we have seen here, right? It will either, when this function is executed, it either calls your resolve or reject. So we need to handle that, we need to track it somewhere. So this resolve or reject will get the data, so it gets a data, both of this gets a data, right? Now so what should be done when when something is resolved? So we say that when something is resolved, it goes to then. So any function that is passed inside then gets the data from the resolve function, right? Like from, in this case, when we did resolve success, this method got success as its data and then it consoled it. So we need to do the same, whatever callback is passed in then, it needs to get that data. So, but how does this function access the callback that is passed here, right? So we don't have a direct way. So let's create one member function for this dot then cb. Let's call it this dot then cb, right? Now what we'll do is this dot then cb equals to cb. So now we're assigning, as soon as we call then, our whatever callback is given to this, it's assigned to this member variable of member function of this poly promise. So this is now this dot then cb has that particular method. So what I can do is this dot then cb of data, right? So this should work for me. Let's try to make use of same example over here, and I have this. Let's not try to check catch for now, and let's not also do chaining of then, because we have not implemented that. Let's just console the data that we receive in then. So so instead of new promise, it will be new poly promise. It's an executor function, it resolves something, and then so we should be getting data received in this then is data, so that is success, right? Let's try to run. Data received in then is success. Yes, we got it. Right, now let's try to do the same for reject, right? Reject, if we do, it will obviously fail because we have not implemented that. Yeah, nothing happens. Now why nothing happens? Because we have not done anything in the reject function, right? So same thing for catch also. When its reject function is called, it goes to this function and it has to call the callback that is passed to the catch, right? So whatever it's passed to the catch, let's create another this dot catch cb and assign it this dot so from here catch, whatever we get, this dot catch cb equals to cb, right? So now what I have to do is I have to just call this dot catch cb of data. We are doing the same thing whatever we have done here, but now let's see whether this will work or not, right? We'll also give catch data implies console.log data received in catch is, let's not do data, let's see, error received in catch is error, and here this is the proper syntax, right? Now let's try to execute this and see what happens. So what it's saying is uncaught type error, cannot read properties of undefined reading catch. So what it's saying is it's tried to get method catch from undefined. Now what is happening here, let's see. So my promise is basically, when we are doing a new poly promise, it's basically returning me an object, right? So this object has then, right? Now I am executing this then. What happens when I execute then? It does all those things, but what is it returning? If I do not pass any explicitly any value, it returns undefined. Now I am trying to check undefined.catch. Obviously that does not exist, right? So what I'll do is, from here I'll just return this. So I'm returning the context of the object, right? So from then, so what does that mean is that I'll have access to this entire object, so I can call catch. Now let's see if this works. Yes, so this works, right? Now let's try to do the same from here also. Now this is our, it should work. Yeah, error received in catch is success. Now basically we have just created a very simple promise with then and catch error. What I'll do is reject function of error. Okay, this is just to make sure that executor function is executing correctly, and if not, then it has to go to the catch block. Now let's try to implement finally. So finally is also nothing more than this dot finally cb equals to cb, right? I don't need to return anything from this from finally, because finally gets executed at last. Now what I have to see is whenever then callback. Okay, now finally cb I have not created, right? Let's create this dot finally cb. Now after each of this, if this dot finally cb exists, then I have to run this dot finally cb of data itself. Okay, and same thing for catch as well. Now let's add finally here, and data implies console log data received in finally is data clear the console, execute error received in catch, data received in finally. So this is basic implementation of finally also. As I informed initially, it's most of the times we make sure that we check that it's the asynchronous operation only that's happening. But what if it's synchronous, like there is no set interval, I just have this, I'm just immediately resolving. Okay, forget about this also, I'll come to this later. What happens if I'm immediately resolving it? Now if I run this, what is saying is this dot catch cb is not a function. What happens? Let's see. Okay, so our executor function gets executed immediately, right? And before your then comes, your it goes to this place. Your resolve function is called, and it's trying to call this dot then cb, which has not yet been assigned because it has not reached then. Before, what happened is we had a set interval, right? So that time our then had executed and all these lines had executed. So now in this case, when it's just synchronous, right, when it's immediately resolved, in that case it has not come to this, and before this only we are trying to run this. Now this is a problem. So what we have to do is, we need to resolve if resolve function needs to do this dot then cb if only this dot then cb is there, correct? Now if it is not there, what happens if it's not there? So if it is not there, let's see, nothing happens, right? Now because then it's coming later, my function is already executed, now it's coming to then. So by the time then is called, the data is already received, but this does not know the data, right? So basically what I had to do is, whatever data is here, I just had to call over here, but I don't have the data. So what do we do? How does this get the data? So let's create another variable called data, this dot data, right? If then cb is not there, that means if it's like immediately called, then what I'll do is this dot data equals to data. Now later on when find then is called, what I do is I check if this dot data is there. If this dot data is there, then I'll immediately call back of this dot data, else I will do this. Let's see if it works. Data received in then is success. It did work. Cannot read properties of undefined reading catch. So again it's the same thing, right? Catch is not there at all, because catch can probably reading catch, because okay, this is not returning, this function itself is not returning this, right? Now let's do this from out. Okay, but it was returning. Okay, now it's working fine. Now it's working fine, right? Now let's do the same for catch also. In catch also what we'll do is if this dot catch cb, then I'll put all of this code inside this if block, else I will put this dot data equals to data, and this I have to do the same operation over here as well. And instead of this dot, it's this dot catch cb equals to cb, and returns this. Now if I just immediately reject, even that should work. Yes, data received in then is success. I did reject. The data received in then success. Data received in catch is also success. Then is this, catch is on. Let's see why this is happening, why it's even in case of reject it's going to both the blocks, right? So this is reject immediately, so we don't have any set timeout, right? In that case, as soon as our executor function is called, our reject function callback gets executed, and in that case it won't go to this particular block, it goes to else, and this dot data is set. Now next when it goes to then block, this dot data is already there, so obviously it will call the callback with this dot data even for then and even for catch, hence it's going to the going in both the blocks. So now we need to remember, we need to have few things, right? We know that there is something called state that is present in promise, right? It can be either pending or fulfilled or rejected, right? So by default let's make it pending, and now we have to play with that. Also now we have to find a way to identify whether it's resolved or rejected, right? So with that, data is, let's consider data is for resolved case, and for rejected we need to know the reason why it was rejected, right? So now let's see, if the first case, if then callback is there, then we don't need to worry about anything, then this dot state is already resolved, correct? Same for here, this dot state is rejected. Now in case of resolve function we have this dot data. In case of reject function, let's make it this dot reason, okay, reason, and let's give reason as whatever reason we get, reason. Now with this what we will achieve is, now when we go to then function, we will check if this dot state equals to pending, and this dot data. That means it has gone to the case of it has just assigned data, so in which we need to run this callback, right? So this dot state is pending, and if there is this dot data, we call callback of this dot data. Otherwise the same goes for the catch also. For catch, what we will do is if this dot state equals to pending and this dot reason, if this dot reason is there, right? In this case we will do this dot reason. Okay, now let's see what happens. Okay, we see, right, error received in catch is success. Now it's going to catch, but why is it not going to finally? It was supposed to go to finally also, right? Its catch is returning this. Okay, so what happens, it calls this callback. So all of this is happening synchronously, as you can see, right? And so even when it goes to finally, it's synchronous, so nobody else is calling finally the callback, right? Nobody is calling the callback. It's now responsibility of finally only, like how we are doing here. So let's see, in this case, if this dot state equals to not equals to, I think this condition will be enough. If state is not pending, then we will have to call this dot cb with this dot data, not this dot cb. It will just be callback, will pass with this dot data, otherwise else this dot finally, it goes here. Let's try to execute this, and error received in catch is success, but it's not coming here because, okay, so once we make a callback, let's update the state. This dot state equals to rejected, and in this case this dot state equals to resolved, right? We are using resolved only, correct? Now let's see. Okay, so we go to finally with undefined because we are doing this dot data. Okay, so okay, something, it's working, finally is working. Now enough of this synchronous thing. Like let's make it set timeout like what we had done before, and see if it still works. 1000 millisecond, that is 1 second, and still run. Perfect, it works perfectly, right? Now our next, yeah, it works perfectly. Now our next goal is to check the chaining of them, right? So like we discussed in the first example, we have to achieve this. So we are very close to implementation of the actual promise in JavaScript. So let's go. Okay, what we are trying to achieve is like what we have done in the example, right? We add one more, then we add data and console log data received in second, then is, and let's see the data. So like what we have done in the first example, it should work. Data received in catch is this catch, okay, because we have rejected. Let's do resolve and see data received in second, then yes. So it's not working as intended. The main reason is that then it's supposed to return a promise which we have not yet done, right? So both then and catch. So let's see how we can achieve that. So we have to return a new promise. It takes an executor function, right? It takes resolve and reject. I'm just writing it in short form. I'll put everything inside this, and I don't need to return this explicitly anymore, right? In this case, what is happening is this condition remains the same. If this dot state is pending and this dot data, so now I'm doing this dot state is resolved. Okay, now I have So okay, so this callback is the first then, right? So the output of this callback goes as a input for this resolve function, right? That is how it's like chaining, it's working, right? So let's do const value equals to this dot data and do res of value, do res of value. Let's see if that works. No, what did I miss? Syntax error, missing I have, it's coming here, else maybe I don't need this, right? Clear this, promise pending, data received in then is success, but it's not going to the second then. The reason for this is that, you know, when we see the then logic, this particular case, if you remember, this was for the synchronous operation, right? When the then is called after your executor function has already executed and everything. So in that case, this is the logic, and for this for asynchronous work we have not done anything. So let's try to remove this asynchronous thing and make it synchronous and see if our logic works. Yes, so data received in then is success, data received in second then is data received in finally is undefined. Okay, we'll see about that. Now what we'll do is we'll try to implement the same for asynchronous case as well, right? So in then, now we have to see this dot then, it's the current callback for the then, and this res is the next callback, right, for the then. So I'll do this dot next then cb equals to res. I'll create one more variable. I don't know if I'm complicating it too much. I have already created this dot next then cb, right? Now what I will do is, now whenever in the resolve function then cb gets called, before going to the finally cb, I will see if this dot next then cb is there, then I'll do this dot next then cb. I have to pass some data, but what data do I pass? The data I have to pass is the output of the first callback. So in my case, const value equals to, I'm doing this, and let me do value. Okay, and what is happening is it's okay. Now let's execute it. Yes, now it's going to the second then also. Now let's see if it works for further, if I chain it further, right? Okay. Okay, even from the second one also return, suppose I have to return Pikachu, right? And I'll write one more then, so then it also gets data, and it also console.log data received in third then is data. This should print Pikachu also. Hopefully this works. Okay, so yes, it's working even for this third then, right? Yeah, so basically what we have done is we have added another next then cb. I think we'll have to do the same for the cat cb also. It could get complicated. I'd want to stop it over here because I don't want to complicate things, and I'm already having headache. Yeah. Hey guys, this is it. So we have created the polyfill. We have tried to get as close to the real promise as possible, but as you see, right, even with the basic polyfill you would be able to crack interviews if it's just for the interview, and with this you have understood a lot of concepts, other concepts of JavaScript as well, right? So I think, yeah, this was helpful to you. I have created other videos also. If you are interested, view it, and like and subscribe. I'll that will motivate me for making more contents. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Bye.